Thank you very much, Steve. So I think this last one, the third one on the POC, we are looking at cross-border payments. So essentially, in as far as this POC is concerned, we are focusing on Malawi and Zambia, but for the whole POC, for the whole deployment, it will involve all the 21 COMESA countries. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, so this is basically just showing the team behind the POC. This is from COMESA Business Council. So maybe can I ask the team to stand up? So we do have Yosef Ondimu, who is the Chief Information Officer. And then we have Hopewell Musundire, who is the Business Facilitation Manager, responsible for onboarding. We have Mariani Nzioki, who is the Marketing and Product Innovation Manager. And we also have John Jairos, who is the Regulatory Affairs Officer. Next slide, please. So in terms of the key, the previous slide, in terms of the key stakeholders, so over and above BMGF, who are the sponsors, these are some of the key stakeholders. So we do have the COMESA Clearing House, who have got the mandate, but we were also designating Bank of Mauritius as the settlement bank. And we do have ThesaWorks as the implementation partner, Lestego as the consultant, and also we do have Mojalop. So these are basically the key stakeholders. And going into the committed participants, these are the committed participants from both Malawi and Zambia. So we have, like, for instance, as you can see, we have commercial banks, we have MNOs, fintechs, but also even MFIs. Next slide. So in terms of the actual deployment, the actual platform will start initially with 8 countries, and these countries are Zambia, Malawi, Egypt, Ethiopia, Mauritius, Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda. So essentially, in terms of the choice of countries, we have to look at those countries who are in the same trading block. So like, for instance, if you see, like in the southern part, we have Malawi and Zambia, who almost do trade. And then if you go to the East Africa, we have countries like, for instance, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda. And then also we have to look at even another sample, like isolated country, let's say Mauritius, which is an island country. Next slide. Going to the platform itself. So those are the key objectives. So basically, we're trying to come up with an integrated regional payments platform that is going to connect banks and non-banks, as well as even other like service providers, DFSPs, BID, MFIs, and others. So our key target are micro, small, and medium enterprises. And as you know, looking at the COMESA region, these MSMEs are integral in as far as GDP contribution is concerned. But also, at a bigger picture, what we're trying to do is to promote intra-trade within the COMESA region. So if you look at intra-trade within the COMESA region is quite low. We're talking of figures around almost 7%. But also, we are even looking at other factors, like, for instance, issues to do with enhanced digital financial inclusion. And again, as a value-added proposition in the near future, we are going to integrate this platform with an e-commerce platform. So we're also looking at like visibility of African products within the market. Next slide. So in terms of our journey, that has been our journey. So we started coming up with a business case. After the business case, we did the business model. The whole aim of the business case was just to see and also to validate if indeed there is a need to come up with a retail payments platform that will have probably low cost of transactions. And now, from October this year, this is when we had to engage in the POC itself. And as I've already pointed out, this is being spearheaded or implemented by ThesaWorks, of course, in collaboration with Lestego. And going forward, what we're looking at is to say after this meeting next week, we are meeting the COMESA Committee of Central Bank Governors, where we'll present the POC results. And after that, we are going to have another meeting, a validation meeting itself, to gain feedback from the other stakeholders. And these are the participants from both countries. Next slide. So these are some of the issues in as far as the ultimate vision design is concerned, as well as the technical POC. So as I said, we're looking at issues like, for instance, policy issues, harmonization. So by the end of the day, we are looking at probably a harmonized policy framework within the COMESA region. That's number one. And number two, also, we are looking at factors like, for instance, how is integration going to be done? So we are looking at a centralized regional system, but also we're even looking at other issues like, for instance, what sort of use cases are we looking at? So on top of the mind, there are use cases like, for instance, B2B, because these MSMEs have to transact with either customers or even other businesses. We're also looking at issues like, for instance, P2B, and also even other e-commerce transactions. But also looking at the system itself, we are looking at the ultimate vision whereby clearing settlements have to be done, issues to do with fraud management, but also even issues to do with, like for instance, proxy lookup services. Next slide. On this slide, we're basically looking at some sort of like a governance structure. So in terms of the governance structure, as for oversight, this is going to be provided by the COMESA Committee of Central Bank Governors. So like in this particular context, we'll be starting with 8 countries. So that means all the central banks in those 8 countries will be responsible for governance, like for oversight. And coming to scheme management and operation, this is going to be done by COMESA Business Council as well as the COMESA Clearing House, which is also another COMESA institution based in Zimbabwe. And in terms of the settlement, we are designating Bank of Mauritius as the settlement entity, and suffice to mention that, like I think 2 weeks ago, we're in Mauritius with Bank of Mauritius trying to refine our design and other aspects. We are also looking at other issues like, for instance, FX consideration, conversion, so to say, probably trying to identify FX providers and others. Next slide, please. So this is just showing the key components of the commercial solution itself. So in terms of the technical solution, we're looking at Moja Loop, but also we are looking at even other aspects like, for instance, API integration, inter-switch integration, issues to do with Forex engine, because by the end of the day, transfers have to be made from one country into the another. So how do we look at issues like, for instance, Forex conversion and the others? Next slide, please. So this slide is just trying to show some of the key considerations in as far as full-scale implementation is concerned. That is to say, beyond the POC, which started this month and is expected to run up to somewhere around mid-November. So at a bigger picture, we are looking at integration with the settlement system. As I said already, we are targeting Bank of Mauritius, but also we are even looking at other aspects, like for instance, settlement improvements. So to say, maybe single versus multiple settlement windows. We are also looking at issues like, for instance, business operations framework that will support multi-currency operations. So this is also where some of the issues we are trying to deep dive to come up like with a fine, probably FX arrangement. So how do we maybe determine the FX and other issues? We're also looking at issues like, for instance, interoperable merchant, and we are focusing on the QR code. I think we will show you a short video about the same, but also we'll be focusing on issues like, for instance, how do we manage fraud, dispute management, but also going forward, we're looking at issues to do with, like, for instance, the ISO 222 roadmap as to what we're going to do. And above all this, I think the most important thing, as I said, we're targeting to have a meeting on 23rd of November in Livingstone, where we'll also get feedback on whatever we've done. At this point in time, I think just like the other previous speakers, let me invite in front Min. So Min to also maybe briefly talk about the technical considerations. Then after that, I'll wind up with the recommendations. Thank you.
Yeah, it's me again. Thank you, Jonathan. So could you go to the next slide, please? So this is the technical integration. So what we as Mojalu community are trying to establish, the first primary objective is to set up a instant payment that is inclusive for a specific country. However, around the world, there is a growing trend that all these instant payment of individual countries are increasingly connected, and there's a lot of work being put into this as well. So some of the earlier projects that were done around this is coming from Asia, where Singapore and Thailand connected their payment system. And since then, that project has expanded to include 5 ASEAN countries in Southeast Asia with the support of Bank of International Settlement. And there's a big project called Project Nexus that is going on in this particular area, linking all the switches in different countries to create a regional payment platform where one citizen or one client from one country can travel to the next for buying small products, checking into hotel, getting a taxi. They will be able to scan the QR code of the citizen of a different country and be able to make a seamless transaction. So that's the overall objective that COMESA Business Council and COMESA Clearing House is also trying to accomplish in Africa as well. So how do we actually accomplish that? So there are 2 considerations that we have to put in place. So the first thing is that in countries where there are national switches that are already in place, how do we connect them? And there are also countries where there are no national switches, especially the interoperable switches are not in place. And how do we make sure that they can participate as well? So considering those 2 channels, we have proposed and started implementing on 2 approaches. The first approach, primary approach, is where the COMESA regional payment platform, leveraging Mojalu technology, sits in the middle, and it will be connected to the regional switch of different countries. So in this POC, for example, it will connect to Malawi switch, as well as a switch in Zambia as well. And I can go through a little bit later on how the connectivity would work. So in this particular area, in this particular approach, what we have termed primary approach, the clients, let's say, for example, in Zambia, they will be indirectly participating in the regional switch through the national switch. The same thing is true in the Malawi as well. The person who will be receiving, the payee, will also be receiving the money through the Malawi switch as well. So the DFSB, or the financial institutions from each country, are not directly connecting to the regional switch, but they're connecting via the national switch. So this is designed so that we can take advantage of infrastructure that are already put in place in different countries and be able to leverage and innovate on top of that. That's one option. The second option is there are COMESA region countries where there are no national switches. The project itself is for inclusion, and therefore want to make sure that they'll be able to participate as well. In that particular case, from those countries where there is no national switch, we design a system so that the DFSB or the financial institution can directly integrate into the regional switch as well. I will talk a little bit more in detail, but just here, the platform design is what we will call a cross-currency platform, where the exchange of foreign currency take place within the hub, and I'll tell you a little bit more about later as well. So this is the working idea that we are proposing and we are testing. But of course, there are some limitation and some additional consideration that needs to take place, and we are currently working with under the guidance of Teddy and Jonathan from COMESA Business Council, as well as CCH, to understand how this will all work. So this is a starting process, but as we move forward with the feedback from all the key stakeholders, we can continue to refine that working model. Thank you. Next slide, please. So for the POC itself, we gave ourselves 2 months, which is a fairly aggressive timeline, if you will. And so in order to accomplish this, we designed something that can demonstrate all of the key features of what we're trying to accomplish without creating technical complexity. So one of the challenges that we have is that onboarding DFSPs. Onboarding the FSP takes a fair bit of time to understand their system, and for them to understand Mojave Loop as well, it takes a fair bit of time, usually more than 2 months. So in order to be able to have the DFSP participate in the system without exposing their system and also bypassing the learning curve, what This Our Work has introduced in the system is mobile wallet. So This Our Work developed mobile wallet solution for other markets. We use one of those as a demo wallet to stand in for a financial institution in this project. So in this project, we call one of that Lusaka Pay and another one Lilongwe Pay. So as market participants and people in this region know, there is no such thing as Lusaka Pay or Lilongwe Pay. This is just to showcase the project itself. And we're not very good at coming up with creative names, so we just took whatever's available. So so in this particular model, what it would happen is that there's a client who is in Zambia, would like to pay their business associates or their merchant in Malawi. The person would use, we have a demo later on. The client would then use the mobile wallet or a bank wallet or a telco wallet, any type of wallet that they have, and they will put in the phone number of the recipient on Malawi. And by going through that, the system would do the transaction from Zambian kwacha to Malawi kwacha, and the message will go through, and the recipient will be able to receive that. The other way is true as well. So someone in Malawi will be able to use Lilongwe Pay to pay a client or a merchant in Zambia as well. Now, again, the cross-border currencies are assumptions here, but of course, we have to go to the market and test a number of assumptions as well, and I'll cover that a little bit more in detail later. In the middle, of course, is the COMESA regional payment infrastructure, and that is powered by Mojave Loop. Thank you. Next slide, please. So this is about the primary option. And so connecting a regional switch with a local switch. How is it going to be complete? How is it going to be done? So we benefited significantly from This Our Work. We benefited significantly from our earlier projects where we connected Mojave Loop based in Myanmar to Visa Direct system based in Singapore, as well as a I2I switch based in Philippines as well. And that project was to facilitate cross-border remittances, because a lot of people from Myanmar and a lot of people from Philippines go and work in Singapore, and then they remit their earnings back to their families in Myanmar and Singapore. So that project required a Mojave Loop system that we call WinePay in Myanmar to connect to Visa Direct, which works as a switch in Singapore. The integration is completed through what we call cross-network provider. The last time we talked about cross-network provider, I called this Google Translate, and some people got unhappy. So anywho, this is essentially still a translation. So as you know, different switches use different messaging system. And in order for the two switches to talk to each other, there needs to be a message conversion. Of course, I'm simplifying it. I already can see a few people, James in particular, and Michael looking at me. But the message conversion layer needs to take place. And of course, it needs to take into consideration of encryption to make sure that the system is secure. Decryption, it needs to happen at sequencing that different switches use. Mojave Loop has a specific sequencing approach. We need to find a way to make sure that that is compatible, or create a way to make it compatible with the other switch that is connecting as well. So that project will be able to use in the learnings and the lessons and the technology that we developed for earlier project, we are able to use in this particular project. In a hypothetical scenario for the POC itself, that will be connecting the COMESA regional switch with a hypothetical either Malawi or Zambia switch, and make sure that the participants from different switches, the transaction happens both ways. So this is something that we are working on. And at a later stage, as Jonathan mentioned, when the Committee of Central Governors of COMESA, with their blessing and there's approval, we will be able to take this forward to make sure that there is an actual COMESA regional switch. And we very much look forward to be able to work with our colleagues at Zambia Switch as well as the Malawi Switch to make the actual POC happen potentially at a sandbox stage and later at the deployment stage. Next slide, please. So currency conversion, again, this is the working assumption. So currency conversion is not only a technical challenge, it's a regulatory challenge as well as commercial challenge as well. So currency conversion, let's talk about regulatory. So different countries have different regulatory control, especially on their capital accounts. Some countries allow free capital flows, some countries do not. And we need to understand what capital controls that are usually dictated or usually put forward by the central banks and relevant regulators, and make sure whether that the currency flow that we are suggesting fits with the national policy. That's one level. And the second thing is currency transaction is a commercial operation as well. So usually when there are commercial transactions involved, the FX flow is a very lucrative business. And so there's many people who wants to have participate in the currency conversion. So usually, sometimes it's the payer financial institution or payer DFSB that can do the transaction, which comes with some economic benefits. Sometimes it's the payee that would like to do the transaction because there is an economic benefit as well. So in order to make a cross-border transaction works, someone have to make a decision, and hopefully it is incorporated into the scheme rule that who is giving the permission or who is going to take the lead in the currency conversion. There's economic and commercial consideration as well. For the POC itself, to illustrate the effects and the features of it, we make the assumption that it will be the payer DFSB or the financial institution that will be primarily tasked with making that transaction, and that transaction conversion is initiated in the payer side. But of course, if there is a reference currency, for example, the conversion will have to happen both at the payer and the payee side as well. And that is something that we are currently considering as well. The other option is, of course, the payee make the transaction. The benefit of payer, the FSB making the transaction, the currency conversion, one of the key benefit of that is the switch that is supporting that the FSB will have to deal only with one currency. Meaning that if it is a Zambian switch, they will only have to deal with Zambian currency because they will provide the Zambian currency to the settlement. The FX provider will do the conversion and settle with the counterparty. In this particular case, we are working with the assumption that Bank of Mauritius will provide that process. If the payee DFSB make that transaction or conversion, then that payee DFSB switch will have to make multiple currency settlement. So this is something, this can add additional layer of complexity, but it also has some economic incentive built in. And so we have to make sure that we take in the feedback of all participants and make the appropriate adjustment. Next slide, please. I'm glad someone found it funny. This is the potential settlement option. So potential settlement option, again, this is a working hypothesis. So under BIS, there's multiple settlement options that they discuss. One is multi-currency. What that means is that the hub itself only deal with one of the many currency that is supported by the hub, but both the payer and the payee are doing the transaction in one currency. So that's what we call multi-currency settlement. There's a cross-currency settlement, which is the payer, DFSB or the switch, and the payer and the payee are working with two different, and the hub, the currency conversion happens within the hub itself. So these are different design consideration, and there's significant impact from the regulator as well as existing settlement operation. So in the current working model, again, working model, we are testing a lot of hypotheses, is that local national switch from country A, let's say Zambia, would have a settlement account with the central bank or the sponsor financial institution. That financial institution will have a mirror account with Bank of Mauritius, nostril account, if you will, and then FXP would sit with foreign currency provider, foreign exchange provider will sit within the settlement itself. So as you can see, country A and country B are only dealing with one currency, and the conversion happened at the settlement stage. So again, there's a lot of simplicity in this model, which makes it effective, but there are also additional consideration that we have to put in place as well. So this is the current working assumption that we are working on, and we are again, with Jonathan and Teddy, we're able to have a conversation with multiple central bank officials who have provided very strong, very positive feedback on how the settlement should work, and it's a work in progress. And we have actually just sent out a survey under the suggestion of Bank of Mauritius to make sure that there's a level of synchronization across all COMESA region that can take place, and what will be the best starting point that's going in place. So this is a work in progress, and of course, I would like to invite all the distinguished guests here from the national switches as well as the central banks to provide us any feedback. So from our side, we're here to learn as much as possible so that our learning will be able to translate into what is truly useful and scalable in the COMESA region. Next slide, please. So additional consideration, so we will be having another discussion about POC, but one of the very useful product of POC is that you uncover a lot of unknowns. We don't know that we don't know. What are the factors that can affect? And as we've gone through this project, which is already a month and a half into the project, we've learned a lot, and we're able to incorporate that into that. And in order to incorporate the new learning, we adopted a safe agile approach. So every sprint, we're learning more, and we're incorporating into that. And hopefully that will be able to, that will support our scaling process. The choice of currency, as I mentioned before, it's a big topic, not one that this our work or COMESA Business Council or one entity will resolve. There's an ongoing discussion across from Banca International Settlement, several different central banks, several different payment provider, and we're hoping to be a part of that conversation as well. Again, we talk about multi-currency, which is the hub operate one of the many currency, but both the payer and the payee use one currency to do that transaction, or cross-currency is different DFSB using different currency. There's an interdependency between settlement cycle and FX premium as well. So after talking to a lot of FX providers, both from the fintech world as well as the commercial world, how they want to price the risk into this process is an ongoing conversation, a very lively discussion about this. In an ideal world, for instant payment to work on a cross-border basis, the currency transaction, the currency conversion should happen in a payment versus payment approach. That's to be aspired to. However, there is serious consideration behind this as well. And I'll give a very specific case in point. So in our discussions, many of the commercial banks and the FXB, they manage only in this particular region, in Zambia and Malawi, there are 4 nostril accounts that most of the FSBs, most commercial bank holds. It is US dollar, pound sterling, euro, and South African rand. So if you were requesting to make a payment versus payment transaction without the appropriate nostril, then payment versus payment become a bit challenging. So how do we resolve that? The settlement model is deferred net settlement. So how do we resolve that? So there is a potential for a currency fluctuation between the time of transaction and settlement. So we have to make sure that FXB are committed to the price that they provide at the time of transaction. And there is the risk, and who is going to bear that risk between the settlement and transaction. And that's something that's ongoing transaction. So we have some good feedback, and we're working on those assumptions as well. So again, the other part of consideration that we have to make is, for example, Malawi and Zambia are very, neighbors, and there's a possibility that there is a very strong trade going on, and therefore it is easy to have a Malawi kwacha, Zambian kwacha trading pair, trading happening at a critical pace that it could become a business for any of the financial service provider to provide that. However, if you think about it at a larger COMESA plan, if it is a transaction between Zambia and let's say Egypt, what is the transaction level and what is the potential transaction volume between the Zambian currency and Egyptian currency? If there is not enough trading volume, then how do we make sure that that trading volume limitation do not impact the transaction? Do we use a reference currency for that matter? And these are some of the consideration. Using a reference currency, as you know, everyone know, significantly increase the cost of transaction because there's multiple transaction involved and every transaction take a cut. And so the end user will have to bear a higher level of cost. And of course, you know, we're trying to create a product for the financial inclusion as a cost is a serious consideration as well. One slide that is not very relevant to the project itself, but very relevant when we're talking to the DFSB as well as key stakeholder is the state of open source technology. Now, when we talk to a lot of the clients, not just in Africa, but anywhere in the world, open source is not very well understood, and therefore it's create a lot of confusion and also hesitation to adopt this as well. So what I wanted to highlight here is that there's the open source fintech foundation, FINOS. Some of you may see the reports as well. And that organization have members from the biggest financial institutions in the world. They are using open source technology and they're contributing back to that community as well. And of course, Interledger, MIFOS, Moja are all a member of that community. So it is not just, you know, elsewhere that are using, the biggest financial institutions are using open source. We also look at Project Nexus as well, which is a project that I mentioned earlier, specifically starting with tip system in Euro, connecting to Duit Pay in Malaysia and Singapore Prompt Pay. And now that program is enlarged to expanded to include multiple more currency. And one of the working level software is that they depend primarily on open source technology. So open source technology is being applied in other projects, regional payment project as well. And of course, Pix, which is a Brazilian national instant payment, also leveraged a lot on the open source technology as well. So open source is not new. Everyone is beginning to use it. And we hope that, you know, this will alleviate some of the concerns that the community or the potential adopter may have with regard to what is open source as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. Jonathan, with regard.
Thank you, Min. So having said that, in this POC, we've learned quite a lot. And I think these are some of the recommendations that we're trying to put forward. Next slide, please. So one of the recommendations is on stakeholder engagement. So what we've noted, it's very important to engage stakeholders. So we've been, in our case, we've been involving regulators vis-a-vis central banks, as well as ICT regulators, national switches, and even other DFSPs. Secondly, we are looking at the modular design. So we also noted to say that adaptability and flexibility is important. So when designing our systems, it's very important to make sure that these systems have even to integrate with upcoming technologies, but also without necessarily having the need to overhaul the whole system. The third issue is to do with security. I think we noted that security is also very important. Most people have also been like maybe having doubts about the security aspects in as far as OSCC is concerned. So we noted that I think there has to be an enhanced cybersecurity framework. The other aspect is to do with interoperability. This has already been highlighted, but also even monitoring KPIs. There has to be real-time monitoring, so much so that if anything happens, it's detected there and then. Next slide, please. The other aspect is to do with regulatory framework, but also even issues to do with scalability. So like in our context, we've started with a POC with 2 countries, and then we'll go to 8 pilot countries. Going forward, we'll add the additional to have 15, and then by the end of the day, we are looking at all the 21 COMESA countries to be connected. But also, we're even looking at issues like, for instance, awareness. There has to be a lot of awareness. People are not aware of what's happening. but also in our design, we have to consider about the end user experience. So what is it that we are doing in as far as the end user experience is concerned? We are also looking at issues like, for instance, building capacity. So in our work, ever since we started our work, we've been training the MSMEs who are our target market. So we have been training them on how to use the digital platforms, because also when you look at these MSMEs, some of them, actually a good number of them, the literacy levels are quite low. So we noted that also building capacity is very important, but we also not only focus on the MSMEs, we look at the whole payment ecosystems vis-a-vis, like for instance, service providers, even including regulators themselves. The other issue is to do with the financial model. So we also noted that budget control are very important when conducting such POC, but also the other aspect, which is more or less like the final one, is on feedback. As we are designing our system, we have to get feedbacks now and then. So like in our particular case, we started the first meeting in Malawi on 26th to 27th of July. And after that, we've been discussing with the various stakeholders, getting feedback, and we'll be winding up our POC with another final meeting, as I've already pointed out, also just to get some good feedback so that by the end of the day, we come up with a good product. Next slide, next slide. So basically, that's the end of our presentation. And we'll play a short video just to demonstrate what we've done in the past few weeks. Thank you very much.
Micro, small, and medium enterprises are essential catalysts for economic growth in COMESA nations. Especially, their small-scale cross-border activities significantly boost job opportunities and ensure food security. However, many grapple with limited access to instant, cost-effective cross-border payment solutions, stunting their expansion. In response, the COMESA Business Council, CBC, embarked on a proof of concept for a digital retail payment platform, starting with Zambia and Malawi. The proof of concept leverages modular technology, assuring optimal exchange rates and total fee transparency. Primarily designed for MSMEs, women, and the youth, this initiative champions secure, affordable, and transparent transactions. Two hypothetical payment platforms, Lusaka Pay for Zambia and Lilongwe Pay for Malawi, are used in the proof of concept to demonstrate the functionality. They function like typical bank or telco apps, facilitating effortless transfers. Lusaka Pay allows easy conversion from Zambian kwacha to Malawi kwacha, and vice versa for Lilongwe Pay. All communication is seamlessly routed through the regional payment platform. These systems are designed to make both person-to-person, P2P, and person-to-business, P2B, payments seamless. Recipients in Malawi can conveniently receive funds in their local currency, regardless of whether the transaction pertains to individuals or businesses. Our ultimate aim is to derive actionable insights from this proof of concept, guiding a comprehensive rollout of the COMESA digital payment platform with feedback from vital stakeholders and regulators. Welcome to our demo application. The actual user interface and user experience will be determined by the participating DFSPs. Here, we display an interface for transactions within Zambia, using Zambian kwacha. This interface represents transactions received in Malawi, using Malawi kwacha. We'll demonstrate a cross-payment transaction from Zambia to Malawi. As a final part of the demonstration, let's now dive into the P2B use case demonstration, which revolves around person-to-merchant transactions via the app. Our example leverages App 1 acting as the payer, and App 3 representing the merchant. The essence of this demonstration is to illustrate a fund transfer from Zambia to Malawi, incorporating QR code scanning for the transaction. Now, let's observe the payer's actions. Using the QR scan feature, the payer initiates the transaction from Zambia to Malawi. After scanning, the payer gains access to critical information about the merchant, including their phone number and the DFSP fees associated with the transaction. These phases mirror the procedure of the P2P use case. This is the stage where the payer confirms the transfer if the payer is satisfied with the exchange rate. Back to the payer's balance, 300 Zambian kwacha is debited, signaling a successful transaction. Now, switching to the merchant's view, we notice an addition of 14,850 Malawi kwacha. This concludes our P2B use case demonstration. It highlights the seamless process of sending funds from Zambia to Malawi with QR code scanning. The next demonstration is our P2P use case transaction. Here, we display an interface of Zambian users app in Zambian kwacha. In our P2P demonstration, the user chooses transfer to send funds to Malawi. Upon entering the recipient's phone number, complete with the right area code, the system quickly retrieves the recipient's details. Behind the scenes, our hub searches for the payee using this number. From there, the payer views the payee's information, such as the name and the associated digital financial service provider, DFSP. Internally, the status reflects as waiting for court acceptance. In this instance, we transfer 200 Zambian kwacha, which, considering fees and exchange rates, translates to 9,900 Malawi kwacha. Following the Level 1 principle, the user reviews transaction specifics, noting the payee will receive 9,900 Malawi kwacha with a fee of 100 Malawi kwacha. This fee structure stems from a 1% charge on the payee's DFSP side and an exchange rate of 1 Zambian kwacha to 50 Malawi kwacha. When details are confirmed, the transfer initiation is a step away. Once satisfied with the exchange rate and fees, a simple confirm click progresses the payment. To ensure security, an OTP code is dispatched to the user for transfer confirmation. Upon completion, the user receives a detailed receipt capturing the transaction ID, amounts transacted in both currencies, and any associated fees. This represents the payer's updated balance after the successful transaction. From the payee's account, it's evident that the transferred amount has been added to the payee's existing balance. This wraps up our P2P demonstration, offering a peek into the seamless transaction journey, both front-end and back-end, simplifying cross-border payments. As a next part of the demonstration, we will explore the FX portal. This platform is a simple web application that facilitates the exchange rate determination, a crucial element for transactions between different currencies. The FX portal is designed for a hypothetical FXP, foreign exchange provider, platform enabling the setting of transaction parameters for the hub to incorporate. At its core, the portal can set the exchange rate. For instance, in our current view of the FX portal, the rate is set at 50, translating to 1 Zambian kwacha being equivalent to 50 Malawi kwacha. This rate guides the hub in calculating the appropriate amounts for transactions from Zambia to Malawi and vice versa. In the FXP transactions menu, you'll find information regarding the payer and payee amounts in their respective currencies, along with the unique transaction ID information from the modulo side. Additionally, the menu provides the exchange rate information that was used at the time of the transaction. Let's delve into the business operation portal and see how it presents transaction details, focusing specifically on our last showcase transaction. Understanding these details is crucial for hub operators as they strive to effectively oversee their day-to-day transactions. To start, let's locate the last transaction using the unique transaction ID generated by the hub. This provides us with a quick and efficient way to access transaction details. we can see that there are two transactions. The first transaction involved the sending of 200 Zambian kwacha from App 1, and the second transaction covers the receiving of 10,000 Malawi kwacha into App 2, belonging to the payee in Malawi. Both of these transactions have been successfully completed, ensuring that funds are accurately transferred. We also have access to essential details, including the recipient's name, account number, and the specific amount transferred. In the Business Operation Portal, you'll find a comprehensive breakdown of each transaction. This includes basic information and technical details, allowing the hub operator to closely monitor and manage all aspects of the transaction. The Payment Manager portal shows transaction details. We will utilize the unique transaction ID generated by the hub to access and examine transaction details. From the sender's perspective, this is an outbound transaction. It will also show the information on the payer and the payee as well as the currency transferred. To track the transaction from the payee side, the same unique transaction ID will be applied to access and monitor the transaction details. On the payee side, this displays as an inbound transaction along with the information on the payer and the payee, as well as the currency transferred. This is the integration layer of the Payment Manager portal platform for the DFSP to monitor the daily transactions. Let us examine the impact of the transaction on other elements of the system. This is the Grafana portal, an open-source platform used for monitoring and analyzing various metrics related to system performance. This helps monitor the back-end processes of both the sender and receiver, can monitor the transaction status log by tracking it with a unique transaction ID generated by the hub. Now, let's take a look at the payee side of the Grafana log using the same transaction ID. Concluding, we've showcased the comprehensive system design of the COMESA Digital Retail Payment Platform Proof of Concept. We hope this demonstration has provided you with a clear understanding of the system's capabilities and how it can transform cross-border transactions. Thank you so much for your attention, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much once again. As I said, this is ongoing work, and even one of our key learning points is say feedback is important. So we therefore look forward to your feedback in as far as the design is concerned, so that we can have a refined business model as well as a refined technical design. Thank you very much for your attention.
All the videos and documents will be uploaded to GitHub and will easily accessible area. I noticed that the TV screen, the resolution is really good, but the projector is a little bit tricky. So we'll make sure that the videos and all the documentation are widely available for everyone to take a look at it and comment. Thank you again.